Joining me now for more, CNN legal analyst and former prosecutor Paul Callan, CNN law enforcement analyst Peter Licata, he's a former FBI supervisory special agent, and CNN senior political analyst Nia Malika Henderson. Paul, first on Weissellberg, so he pleads guilty. The point of how this, the focus on Weissellberg all along was to try to get him to cooperate in a broader investigation into the Trump business. He's apparently not going to be willing to cooperate with them, though, as Kara mentions, he's going to be required to testify in court. What is he doing here? What happens?
Well, he's been entirely unwilling to testify specifically against Donald Trump. And in negotiating this plea, he worked out this special deal where he will testify against the Trump organization, but not against the former president himself. So I think that's a defeat for prosecutors. I mean, it's a big deal because somebody from the Trump organization, and he's a key figure, he's a central figure at the Trump organization, has pled guilty to this 15-year scheme of tax fraud. But we have no agreement that he's going to say anything about the former president.
So, Paul, I also want to ask you really quickly on this hearing that's going to be happening in Florida that Kate Bolduan was telling us about. This gets to a judge going to decide whether or not the affidavit that led to the FBI search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago home will be released in some way, shape, or form. DOJ does not want that to happen. Do you think that will?
I don't think it will. And I've read the Department of Justice's 13-page memorandum of law to the judge, and it's very, very persuasive. And this is what they say. They basically say, we have an ongoing investigation here. We have witnesses who came forward to give important information. We used, quote, special investigative techniques in this investigation. All of these things are revealed in the affidavit. And it simply would be totally disruptive of an ongoing criminal investigation to release this information to the public. And they add something else. They think it will actually endanger the lives of agents and potential witnesses who may be listed, because a lot of threats have been made to people and even to FBI agents who are involved. So I think DOJ makes a very persuasive case that these documents should remain sealed.
Peter, that actually is a perfect question for you. What do you think will happen if the affidavit is released?
I don't think a lot is going to happen, as Paul said, and I'm not too sure it will. Generally, affidavits are not made readily available, and there's reasons for that. As Paul indicated, it's generally set out by the prosecution to protect sources and techniques, whether it's confidential human sources or electronic techniques in a method to gather information. So even if the affidavit were released this afternoon, it would be extremely redacted, which, those are those black Sharpie marks across most of the page. So you wouldn't see a lot or be able to glean a lot out of that.
And Nia, I want to get your take on what you think of this new reporting from CNN that Donald Trump is considering releasing the surveillance footage of the FBI executing the actual search warrant. There seems to be some debate amongst his inner circle if it's a good idea or if it could backfire. What advantage does he get with that, do you think?
Well, listen, if you've heard from Donald Trump and his allies, they are really trying to portray this as a giant overreach by the FBI, by the DOJ, essentially saying that there was this raid, that they ransacked this beach house that Donald Trump has, and even planted evidence, which, of course, there is no evidence of. Because remember, Donald Trump himself watched as this search of his premises was going on. So the idea that somehow something went on, planting evidence, just makes no sense. They think that this will raise the temperature around this. This will enrage his supporters and sort of make them rally even more around them. The danger here, I think, is it will raise the temperature around FBI agents. We've seen already that names and information about some of these FBI agents who did conduct that search have been revealed. We have seen already that there have been attempts at violence against FBI agents and concern all around that agency because of the way that Donald Trump and his allies are portraying this search. I think one of the things this search, if they revealed this, that it was probably a fairly orderly search. They didn't go in those jackets. There was no sort of battering ram to get into the beach house. It was conducted in a fairly orderly and professional way. And so in that way, it could backfire because it would show, listen, this wasn't the way that Donald Trump tried to portray it as a kind of unlawful search and seizure and kind of raid that he has tried to make it seem like.
And this kind of also potentially fits with a pattern that we've seen with the former president over time, which is floating like, I could release it if I wanted to, or it's coming, and then it doesn't, and in regard to many topics. But Peter, same question though to you. What if Donald Trump would release the surveillance video of the FBI search, what do you think that kind of a release would do?
Well, let's just say that I hope, and you would expect, that the FBI would encourage the release, because we would hope that the agents that were there conducting a legal search, by the way, and not a raid, as our colleagues have said, that they did everything in accordance with best procedures and operations in the highest tradition of the FBI. Okay, so, the planning of evidence, I've been 21 years in the FBI. I don't know anyone that's been accused in my organization of planning evidence. For law enforcement, I work with public safety squads as well. I mean, so you would hope the FBI would encourage it. Kind of like, go ahead and show it, and you will see no impropriety by the agents on scene. That's what you would hope, and that's what I would expect as a former FBI agent of 21 years, just that.
That's very interesting and a great point. Go ahead, do it. Let's see what it shows. It's good to see you all. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.